All right, my friends. So we're going to continue our discussion with proportions. And what we're going to do now is we're going to focus on solving proportions. All right, and this starts on page 26 in your workbook. And you can see that this is going to take care of standard 12.3. I can use proportions to solve problems involving linear relationships. Now, for most of you, if not all of you, this is going to be a review from Algebra 1 and solving. So what I'd like you to do is go ahead and try the opener, pause the video, solve that, and then we'll come flip it back on and we'll see how you did. All right, so in Algebra 1, we talked about cross multiplication. All right, and so we do numerator times denominator. So 25 times x would be 25x. And then we do numerator times denominator over here. And we get to 100. And notice this gives us a simple linear problem to solve. And we solve by dividing both sides by 25. So x is equal to 4. All right, and what you really see is that this is using one of those properties we discussed in the prior lesson, that cross product property. All right, so now if we come down and look at, all right, our cross product property. All right, so this is what we talked about in our last lesson, right? So a times d would equal to c times b. Oh, that's a typo. That should be a c times b right there. C times b. All right, so I'm going to make that. All right, and so you can see that here we have 1 times 10 equals 2 times 5, and that would be 10 equals 10. Now, let's talk about why that is, right? Like, how do we get to that? All right, and this is c times b here. And really what this is, all right, I'm just going to write this here, is really an undoing of division 2 times. So notice, on the left-hand side, I am dividing by b. So to undo dividing by b, I would multiply by b. And remember, when we multiply by a number, it's really over 1. And so notice that undoes the division here, and this leaves me a over 1 equals, and if I multiply by b on the left side, I also have to multiply by b on the right side. Okay, and then notice what I get here. I get c times b in the numerator. So remember, when you multiply fractions, you do numerator times numerator, and then denominator times denominator, and I still have that divided by d on the right side. So notice now what I want to do is come over and undo the division on the right side. And the way I undo dividing by b, or excuse me, dividing by d, is to multiply by d. All right, and once again, that undoes that, and that leaves me the c times b. And then when I come over here to the left to also multiply by d to balance out our equation, I get a times d. And so really, the cross product property is really just, all right, a quick way of undoing that division on both sides. It allows us to jump to this step versus having to go through individually and do both of those multiplications. All right, and so it's really developing that property for us through things we already know to be true. All right, so here's what I'd like you to do. All right, so just real quick, all right, why don't you try problems 1 and 2? All right, pause the video, try these 2 problems, flip it back on, and let's see how you do. All right, so we're back at it here. I had to grab my calculator just to make sure I'm ready. All right, so once again, if we do our cross product, now once again, it doesn't matter which cross product you start with. I typically, if I only have one variable, I start with wherever that variable is at. So x times 18 would be 18x. And then I would do 6 times 39, and that's why I wanted to grab my calculator real quick. All right, so 6 times 39 is 234. All right, and then you would divide by 18 on both sides, and you would get to 13. Now, once again, notice you could, all right, check your work, because once I know what this 13 is, I could go back and plug it into my proportion, right? So 6 over 13 equals 18 over 39. And then I could reduce, all right, to make sure that I have equivalent ratios here. So that is already in lowest terms, and then notice I can divide 18 and 39 by 3, and that gets me to 6 over 13. So you should be able to go back once you get your value, whatever value that is, you should be able to go back and plug it in, all right, and test and see if you are correct. Okay, now if we look at number 2 here, all right, so you should hopefully have had 6x equals, all right, and then 7 times 36 is 252. Now, once again, it doesn't matter which product you start with. It doesn't matter which side it's on. So you might have 252 equals 6x. That's totally fine, right? Okay, so a times b, or excuse me, a equals b is the same as b equals a, right? So either side. And then I can divide both sides by 6 here. All right, so 252 divided by 6, and that means x is 42. So hopefully you did well on that. Now, let's go ahead and flip the page and let's look at page 27. And I'm going to jump to number 4 here because I just want to go through number 4 real quick to just as a quick reminder of what you need to do. So once again, we're going to, all right, cross multiply. And notice when I do this, all right, I have more than one item here. So when I write this, I'm going to put that into parentheses because I need to make sure that I distribute that 18 to both numbers here, all right? And then I get 6 times 39, which we said on the prior problem was 234. All right, and then 18 times x is 18x, and 18 times negative 3 is negative 54. All right, and so I always include this step just to be sure that I distribute to both quantities. The biggest mistake when students do this problem is that they distribute the 18 to one of the numbers, but not necessarily both. All right. And then I always get things equal to 0 when I solve, so I'm going to subtract 234 from both sides. So 18x minus 288 is equal to 0. All right, that means that 18x equals the 288, and now I can divide both sides by 18, and if I do that, oh, that's not right. Let's get the 18 in there. I get x would equal to 16. And notice, once again, I can go back and plug that in, right? So I can have 6 over 16 minus 3 equals 18 over 39. And then I get back to that 6 over 13. All right, and so we can see from our prior work that this, once again, is going to be equivalent. So the nice thing about solving equations is you already have a nice built-in self-check, all right, to know if your work is correct or not. All right. So there you go. So that's our lesson on solving proportions. All right, you finish this lesson up, and I will see you next time when we will solve proportions with quadratics. All right, have a good night, my friends.